But Persephone being hurt by the angry public showed pretty well how she's still struggling to shed the idea of herself that she has, that she's a good girl, good person, and good people aren't supposed to do bad things, even though that's not true. Good people make mistakes all the time. She hasn't realized that yet. So the ending of Lore Olympus is here, and while I was thinking about that, I was reminded of a movie I watched a few weeks ago called Poor Things. And I realized that they actually had a few similarities. Both of the main protagonists, females sheltered, kept in control by someone higher than them, either their mother or parental figure, and also they're kind of this archetype that is both the manic pixie dream girl and Born Sexy Yesterday mixed together. Like, all the men in these stories are obsessed with them for whatever reason, and they can do no wrong. They're just wonderful. And they've got that youthful energy that is just magnetizing. And because of the way they've been raised, they're strange, they're eccentric, so they're drawing people towards them, I guess. And so I just wanted to take a look-see and see how they handled these situations differently. So even though they remind me of each other, I wanted to see what made them different, or what made my reaction to them different, because I quite enjoyed Poor Things in a way that certain situations in Lore Olympus, by contrast, frustrated me. And so I'm going to go down the line. So Poor Things, part one of it, we start out, it's about a young woman who, after jumping from a bridge, is found by a mad scientist, and she's like in a coma. So this guy, he found a once-in-a-lifetime subject for his experiment because the woman's pregnant and like barely alive. So he takes the baby out, he removes its brain, and he puts it in the mom's body. And before you go, what? Why? There is no reason. It's just science gave him the opportunity to create lightning in a bottle. There's no way he was going to pass up this opportunity given to him. So the baby woman's name now is Bella Baxter, and for the rest of her life, she is going to be kept in this house, taught vocabulary, taught how to read, the basic motor skills and stuff that you try to teach a toddler. I guess he wanted to see how she would develop compared to a normal baby. Eventually, though, Bella, of course, she wants to go outside. She begs the mad scientist, he calls himself God, and the assistant who has been put in charge of studying her and is also her love interest for some reason. It's not 100% clear how old Bella is at this point mentally, like in the story, because it's been in a montage. Basically, she's developing faster than normal, but she still throws tantrums and things, so I'm guessing she's elementary school age. Every time they tell her no to something, she throws a tantrum, and it's quite funny seeing a 30-year-old woman thrash around and scream because she can't have ice cream in the park. Something positive about Bella being kept indoors, though, is her developing with a lack of shame. If she wants to try something or do something, she's gonna want it, she's gonna yell for it, she's gonna do it no matter what, and nothing will make her doubt this decision to do this thing. She even starts masturbating at the dining room table because she just doesn't care about anything. She has no social norms to bring her down. There's nothing shackling her the way the rest of us have been shackled by our life experiences. And it's possibly one of the most awkward scenes, but it was pretty funny too. I noticed a lot of people were disturbed by Poor Things and calling it a part of Hollywood's mission to normalize pedo rings, and who knows, maybe it is, but what do I know? But in the end, it's art, and sometimes art needs to be weird and make us think about stuff and imagine it in different ways. How boring would it be if every movie that came out was 100% palatable and not weird or shocking in any way? Let's open our minds for just a minute here. Now, for Persephone, she's been kept in the mortal realm for her entire life because her mother, for good reason, did not trust Olympians, specifically the three tyrant kings. One day, she is allowed to leave and live with Artemis, who is tasked with watching over her in this new environment. Now, unlike Bella, Persephone isn't the best at asserting her wants and needs and is easily swayed, and that is most likely a consequence of Demeter controlling every aspect of her life up to this point. For Bella, the mad scientist, he keeps her inside, but he also allows her to decide what she wants to do that day, even if it's just stuff that he has provided her with. He's not like keeping a schedule with her and be like, you have to do this right now. And Persephone was pretty much kept on a grueling schedule her whole life, with all the responsibilities and duties being forced upon her, while she also was not allowed to explore herself and her own feelings. I notice many of these situations these two characters get into in the beginning of the story are the direct consequence of them having no fear of man, and not even just men as in the opposite sex, but just people in general. Bella has no problem walking up to strangers and saying whatever's on her mind, no filter. Sometimes it pays off and it makes new friends, sometimes it's awkward. The story itself couldn't happen if she wasn't willing to run off with a creepy playboy lawyer man that she just met. She has no idea if maybe his intentions could be negative to her, because she sees it as a positive that she's even getting out of this house that she's been trapped in for her whole life. And with Persephone, she wouldn't even have met Hades if she wasn't willing to binge drink with some dude that she just met that was creeping up on her and put her in the back of his car. Because I feel like most rational people, after someone came up to them and was like, hey, take this, they would have gone back to try and find their friend. But she didn't do that. She was like, oh sure, I'll take these drinks from you, stranger, that you barely introduced yourself to me. I'll do that. We definitely got to get that girl some street smarts. And also something I found interesting is the way the naked body is natural to them. It's not something to hide, it's just what they have. And even when there's like other people in the room that's not their family or it's the opposite sex, they don't feel the need to overly hide or put on pants, run upstairs and put on pants because you're walking around your house. You just have like a t-shirt and underwear on, and Persephone doesn't feel the need to cover herself, which I thought that was pretty cool, even if it didn't end up so well. On to the second part of these stories. In the beginning, one of the first places Bella is allowed to be outside is the park, and she kills a frog there because she's been living in this environment where life isn't sacred. God the scientist cuts into anything and anyone does any experiment he feels will be worth the results. So Bella, by extension, is destructive, not super considerate of other people's feelings or space over her own. In the second arc of Poor Things, Bella has been kidnapped onto a ship by her lawyer lover because he's starting to get more possessive of her the more time they spend together. And on the ship, she meets two new people who could be described as intellectuals, an older woman and a black man. Their names are Harry and Martha. They're traveling together and they are fully accepting of how strange Bella is and the types of questions she asks. A beautiful friendship blossoms as they discuss human nature and read books together on the deck. It was a really cute relationship, and this was the first genuine one that Bella has formed with other people that want her to have her own thoughts and feelings, no secret motives besides imparting their view on the world and its cruelty, and just having a little chat about it. There's a moment where Harry, the pessimist, shows Bella what it's like for the less fortunate, living outside, starving, forced to work at the bottom of the barrel, barely scraping by. And she mentally and physically couldn't handle seeing such injustice. Her whole body cringed, just sobbing violently. And you were reminded about how young she really is. You would probably never show a class at an elementary school footage from a war, or maybe actually they would. I've heard a number of people talk about having to watch 9/11 clips in class, but because of this, Bella develops a compassion for others, for helping others after this, and impulsively gives all of their money to some guards who claim that they will pass the donation along. This is clearly a lie, but it was super funny when Bella's gentleman friend finds out that she did this and just has a complete mental breakdown. Arc 2 Persephone is a bit of worlds apart from Part 2 Bella. She had to stop going to school. She's on the run from the authorities because Zeus put out a warrant for her arrest. She's insecure about her relationships, about her powers, about her sexuality. A lot of Persephone's problems are bigger than her, unfortunately, which means she can't just bulldoze through them. Not every situation in your life can be handled by girl bossing. You gotta use your powerful connections to get ahead. In this case, she had to have Hera help her get the photos away from Apollo so she's not being blackmailed anymore. And she had to have Hades as her lawyer to get Zeus off her back, which I'm not sure how that's allowed because they're in this like situationship type thing, but since they're gods, the rules don't apply to them, I've realized by now. So the true girl boss is support, just like the true power is the magic of friendship. Now, after the trial, and there's a punishment, they close the borders, no contact for our lovebirds. Hades has to stay in the underworld, Persephone has to stay in the mortal realm and do her job as goddess of spring. There's a time skip, and she's old now, she's 30, her eggs are all dried up. Just kidding, they don't age for real. She is desperate to end the punishment that Zeus gave her and ready to get Hades Big D. She cannot stop talking about it. I was like, oh my gosh, girl, you're gonna get your chance. Calm down. But good news, this time Persephone is the hero. After Cerberus appears in the mortal realm and he's injured, she gathers up her resolve and ventures down into the underworld to find Daddy Warbucks and make sure that everybody's okay. Everyone's doing well. Both of these stories were pretty gray in terms of morals, who's good, who's bad, who's a murderer, who's a saint. Now for the ending, the final arc, which I feel was about taking responsibility for your decisions and standing on your own. That's probably the one thing Lord Olympus never got from me was Persephone taking on her consequences. I spoke before about support. Support is great, and you should always be able to lean on your family. But then I started to notice that that was pretty much her entire, whenever she had an issue with anything, other people would have to fix it for her, and that can't last forever. Eventually, you're gonna have to do it yourself. Her act of wrath dodged the punishment. Erebus's power exchange messed with her powers, made it about winter. It actually ended up being a gift instead of a trade. She turned mint into a plant, didn't really get in trouble for that either. And it was completely unjustified considering you stole her man. During her second massacre, due to Erebus messing with her powers, she created a winter that also killed a bunch of people. That gets cleaned up by Gaia in the end. And I know that because they're gods, they get special privileges, but it was so annoying that their sacrifice was spending 3 months apart every year. And they started crying after she said that. I was like, Persephone, if you don't want to do your job, don't do it. Just create a second spring goddess or something. I don't know. You can go hang out in the underworld for the rest of your life, whatever. So, independence, being able to exist on your own, Persephone's never able to do that. She cannot exist and be stable without this man. She has a mental breakdown in punishment exile because the safety from Hades is gone, and it wasn't even real. It was just away from her problems. Avoidance, if you will. No mortal world, no Apollo because he's banned, and now that's no longer an option. So she can't stop thinking about Hades. She cries, caused a famine, who knows how many people starved. They get separated multiple times in this comic, and each time is Armageddon, essentially. Persephone loses her mind when she's alone. She really needed some true, consistent friends, some equal peers on her level, if you will, since Artemis wasn't doing her job. And Daphne is a flower nymph. I'm not sure she considers her an equal. There were a few instances in the comic that kind of hinted that nymphs are second-class citizens, and Thanatos is technically her stepson, and Hecate is an employee. So where is Persephone's support system that's gonna give it to her straight? I don't think she had that. Now we have Bella. Bella leaves home with one source of control. She's leaving two behind because this one is aligning with her current goals. Once she realizes that the new guy is also nuts and is no longer her accomplice but an obstacle, he starts talking about how he loves her, let's run away together, and she's like, no. She starts branching off from him because that's not why she took this trip. For love? No, she's engaged to Max, the scientist assistant, and Bella just wants to explore. Once they are in France, due to the prostitute thing, he leaves, sort of. She moves on. It was cool to me that Bella was on her own doing her own thing, but still sent letters home so they knew that she was okay. They knew where she was and what she was doing, but they can't directly influence her actions. Rather than cutting ties and going wild, Bella knows that she still has a home to return to when she's ready, a safe space. Some of Persephone's lack of self is due to everyone meddling in her business. Demeter meddled, Hera, Hades, Eros. She has this image of herself, goddess of spring, kind, charitable, but she likes the darkness. She loves Hades and his little corrupt self. She keeps taking actions that are in opposition to the model daughter that she has in her mind. In the end, she's used to being taken care of. She likes nice things like fur coats and fancy dresses and watches, which is fine. I felt catfished. So much of her wrath from season 1 was about her feeling not like she was in control and like she couldn't make her own decisions and that she wasn't allowed to be free, you know? And then these people are trying to take away her freedom, the number one enemy of this Apollo trying to lock her down. I believe that Apollo should have been turned into a roaming tree or something, maybe dragging boulders behind him for thousands of years. I don't know. Rip his limbs off, boil his bones, whatever you want. It would give him a long time to think about his actions. Bella, after taking an action, looks at the results of her actions and the reactions of others and learns from it. Her lover's reaction to her being a prostitute was pretty funny. He was disgusted, and she looks at him and was like, "What is your problem, dude? I did what needed to be done. We're broke." If I didn't know where she came from, I would think she did it on purpose to get rid of him since he'd become insane. But he was already nuts, at least in the beginning, though he was charming with his craziness. The more Bella did what she wanted, that guy started losing his screws, coming unwind. Both Persephone and Bella don't know who they're meant to be, but for Bella, it's not a crutch, it's a purpose and motivation. The more she finds out, she confronts people in her life for answers. Where did I come from? Why are people bad? What are other people like? God and Max finally reveal to her that she's both her mother and baby. She calls them disgusting. She's on the case. And then Persephone, she's highly suggestible and doesn't realize her desires are being preyed on by older, trusted adults. She doesn't investigate them because in her eyes, anyone less controlling than Demeter must be good. And those same people fail her. Hades is there to pick up the pieces. I wonder what would have happened if he'd stayed hostile towards her affections for longer than 2 days. Another theme that was handled quite differently, purity. Bella's prostitution. So after she gave their money away to the poor people, they ended up stranded and broke because the captain kicked them off the ship. Obviously, if you don't have any money, we can't keep feeding you and traveling you around the world. They use the prostitution to elevate. She's using the money she gets from it to feed herself. She has a roof over her head. She's going to college. She has a new friend. She also learns from the lady running the brothel that sometimes you have to do hard and unsavory things to keep yourself alive and afloat until you reach your next stop in life. Purity is not this sacred thing that's more important than everything else. And they didn't try to sugarcoat it either. They show us all the terrible, depraved, and embarrassing things that she has to do while she's working, and you can see how she's getting a bit tired of it. For Persephone, it is the opposite. Because she was raised to be a virgin forever, after her essay, she feels shame and regret at both what her life was and the fact that it's probably ruined now, or she wants it to be ruined, but she won't admit that yet. She doesn't know. And how she was just used and thrown away by Apollo. It was probably one of the saddest episodes in the comic, but really important because we got full confirmation that Persephone is not what she was raised to be. That dainty, kind girl is a facade. She wants blood. I had hoped Persephone would work through her trauma and come to the conclusion that her body is her own and not a piece of tissue to be used, and her value isn't dependent on her past. But because this is a romance, we ended up with the angle of virginity as a mindset, so I'm still pure for Hades, and that's cute, but you are still assigning your value to a man and a man's actions. And this is just one moment in a cycle of hyperdependence. Her entire relationship with Hades at times is a trauma response, in my opinion. She ran to him to try and bring back the human she killed on accident. She ran to him after Apollo twice, actually, because he's banned there. Ran to him and got married after her mother overstepped boundaries. At one point, I questioned if she really liked him or if she was desperately craving a space that felt safe, since he rarely challenged her after season 1. I feel like most people would retreat to being comfortable if they could, and there were no obvious consequences. They did have chemistry, though, I'll admit that, and I found a number of their conversations to be enjoyable, so maybe they're compatible and he's a good safe space. And I can't finish this video without complaining about the love interest. The love interest in these stories are sickening. The main girl, always just so perfect. Her beauty can barely be comprehended, and she's so different because she was raised in captivity and knows next to nothing about being outside, and you can show her the big city, the shiny life, and she'll stay with you forever. Gag. What could be better than someone staying with you because they genuinely like you and picked you over everything else? Poor Bella, but she was going to get married off to Max after only stepping outside one time, and it was insidious because that guy, you could tell he was a little uncomfortable because he knew it was unethical, but he claimed he loves her and this is the best for her safety. We can get married, Bella, and then we'll travel the world. She would never get a moment of peace during that whole trip. That's why she had to knock him out before she left. Too clingy. The genre differences had an effect on of these takes, I believe, as well. LO is about drama and romance, so it's almost a requirement that the female lead needs the male lead in order to move forward in the plot. A lot of the stories with the female lead doing her own thing end up sidelining the male love interest a bit, and I'm not sure if that's the solution because he's still a character in the story and he has his own thoughts, feelings, goals, needs. Poor Things is an absurd dark comedy, so there's no barriers. I could tell the man who wrote this book did not care about what other people were going to say. He had his idea and he was going to make it. The movie was really pretty, futuristic steampunk type of environment, poppy color. There were many stills that I wanted to screenshot and save later just so I could paint it. I feel like this movie will be great painting practice if you're an artist. So I think I'm done now. I think I got all my thoughts out of the way. I enjoyed watching that movie and I enjoyed reading that comic, and now it's time to move on to something else.